Hi, and welcome to the Lioness Summit, all you amazing women. Today, I am here with another incredible young lady who is literally changing her world. And so excited to have her with us. Her name is Courtney Grace Watson. And before I get started in with Courtney, I want to remind all you ladies that we will be here every Wednesday on our midweek MOXIE, just to remind you of encouragement and to help you stay on track, stay the course, and just keep working on your goals, your dreams, and to not give up. And I hope our goal for all of this is to give you some, not just some inspiration and some courage, but to also give you some tips, some thoughts, and how you're doing your business, how you're doing your ministry, and as an entrepreneur, how you are handling things, and to just lift you up. So we'd love to hear back from you. You're welcome to reach out to us on lioness-pr.com. That is our website. And you can check out all the other amazing speakers that are on our midweek MOXIE. And you get to hear a little bit more about what's coming on with the next one. So, Courtney, I met you a couple of years ago here in Nashville, Tennessee, through an amazing organization that you and I both are very dedicated about, and it's called Forward Women.
Yeah.
I remember the first time that I met you, you just got such a bubbly personality, beautiful smile, and then when I heard your story, I was simply captivated by not only your resilience, but your courage. That is what I love to bring in here, is stories of people who have had courage in some really brutal situations. And I would dare say yours was death defying, actually, literally, and how you handled all of it, and how you haven't sat back and stayed quiet about it. I love how you're just being brave. And that's important because as women, as just as humans, we need to hear each other's stories. And I appreciate you taking time to come here and be on the midweek MOXIE here at the Lioness Summit. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you for asking me. Gosh, I'm so excited.
I am too. So Courtney went to tell us about your vacation.
So I have gone to a Christmas camp, which I would 1000% recommend, and will be.
So why would I spend a week of my vacation time to go to Christmas camp?
Well, I mean, apart from the obvious fact that you're there for an entire week to talk about and celebrate Christmas, it's really fun. It's just a time when you can go. Like, I went with one of my sisters and one of my best friends, and you go and you decorate Christmas cookies and you watch Christmas movies, and they teach you how to make like really specific Christmas cocktails, and they teach you how to like tie bows around your presents to make them look really pretty. And they teach you, gosh, there were just so many classes that we would take, and they were all Christmas related. And the woman that hosted it actually wrote the Hallmark movie Christmas Camp. And so it came from that, and it's great.
Maybe you can go back one day and be in a Hallmark movie. I think that would be fun. That would be so fitting. We would all just, we would celebrate with you on that one, Courtney.
I would say yes in a heartbeat.
I know you would. You would have now, Courtney. Let me give a little backspace on Courtney. Courtney is an accountant with the Predators. Go Preds!
Yes, go Preds!
Yay! They're awesome, and they're an awesome group to work with. Everyone who's with the Preds has said they loved it. So just a big shout out to the Preds. Your is now, and their foundation is huge, supporting special needs children and so many other organizations here. So I love the Preds. Now, you not only do you work with them, but you also are on the board with a few organizations, with the Forward organization.
Yes.
And I know you're super involved with your church.
Mm-hmm.
And you are an author. I'm so excited about the book that you're doing and how you are changing what people are thinking about Christianity in the workplace. And it's called Growing Up, right?
Yes.
Between it, and it is like how to manage and how to be real of where you are in the office, between the office and the altar.
Mm-hmm.
And how are you as a young woman on your own coming out? How do you handle all of that? How do you handle the pressures? You're not around mom and dad and at their church. This is you. And this is you being adulting, not just adulting in the workplace, but adulting spiritually and in life, and how you find that balance. I love this book. We're going to be talking about that. So let's go ahead and jump into that, Courtney. When you were growing up, what was it like?
So I was very blessed to have a family who raised me in the church, raised me in faith and in learning how, like, I remember my mom would come into our rooms and pray with us every night. And so there was a good foundation for me laid from the beginning as far as my own faith goes. And I think, I grew up in a small town, and you have that kind of reality that you grow up in that is really, I think, unique from a lot of people who haven't grown up in a small town and don't understand kind of the weird family balance that comes with that.
Is it really a balance, or is it like everybody just knows? That's what, that I can get that. And I think a lot of our listeners can relate to that.
Yeah.
Too. When you grow up in a town like that and you go to a big church, you go to church with everybody and everybody.
Yeah, you definitely know a lot of the people that you live around. And I grew up in a small church, so we only had, it was a small town church that had, I think we had about 100 people. And so of course, knew everybody there, and there was a lot of love there because goodness, they watched you grow up, and they were a part of that. And so I feel really, really lucky to have grown up the way that I did. Yeah. And I think it's interesting to think about there are obvious benefits and there are obvious just blessings. Okay. But there are also a lot of challenges with that, because there is a sense of expectation, and there is a sense of these people know who I am. So as I'm growing up and as I'm trying to navigate what it looks like to grow up and to kind of be a different version of myself than I was maybe 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, there is a little bit of a challenge in learning how to be true to where you feel like the Lord is leading you. Yeah. When a lot of that work may be internal. And so it's a weird balance. I don't really like the word balance, but it's a weird kind of thing that you have to just kind of figure out. And that may be different for everybody, but for me, that is a lot of kind of where the book came from. Was I was like, okay, like what do I want my life to look like outside of what is expected of me and outside of what, all these people think and outside of what all these people know about me already? Like, what do I want people to know and what do I want my life to stand for and my faith to look like? And I think that's a really big challenge as you're graduating college, especially, and starting your job and your career. Mm-hmm. It's tough. It really is.
It is. And it's interesting when I hear you say that. A friend of mine, their daughter, she was extremely sick for quite a while and was over in Children's Hospital in Birmingham for almost a year. And when I heard her speak after it, she said, so many people keep coming up to me and saying, oh, didn't you miss prom? And didn't you miss this and that? She said, no, because when you come face to face with death, you get a different perspective. She said, those things don't matter because they're just one tiny thing and all of my life. And my life is bigger than just that. And she said, I thank God that through all this, I have a perspective of goodness of life. And I hear that in you. And I would dare say that as you were navigating and trying to figure this out, your life was interrupted. Tell everyone, if you don't mind, what was your interruption? What happened to you?
Yeah, so about 8 months into my first job, so this was 8 months post-college, still very new, still trying to figure out, what am I doing here? I had a headache that started, and come to find out, it was a symptom of a bigger problem called a Chiari malformation, which means my brain just doesn't really sit where it should, which causes a lot of pain in some people. And so I was one of the lucky ones who it caused a lot of pain for. And I had that same headache nonstop for about 11 weeks. And then they decided that the surgery was going to be the only way that I could find some relief. And so that's what we did. And so in May of 2018, I let someone do brain surgery on me. So.
And that's interesting. So I want you to share with them when you said I let them, because this was your choice.
Yeah.
You got to choose this.
Mm-hmm.
That had to be a lot of, or was it? What was that hard, or was it like, stop the pain? If this will work, I will take whatever consequences come.
Yeah, it was not an easy decision, because it was something that, again, I was very new to being on my own.
Mm-hmm. So if you don't mind, you had, what were your choices? What was your choice? You had this or this. What were your either ors?
So my choices were, we could keep trying to manage it with different medications, which we had tried a handful already, and none of them had worked. So the option was keep trying medicines that are not guaranteed to work, and could lead to needing to have the surgery later on down the road anyway. Or I could have the surgery. And so it really was, a choice, but there was an element of, it seems like the only real option.
Right.
And so with that, I think it was really difficult, because it was the first major life decision that I had to make for myself. And, at the time I was 22. I was 22 years old. And I don't know. I just had this sense of, leading up to making that decision, it seems like the Lord was kind of preparing me to make that decision. And so when the time came, they run you through it, and they're like, okay, if surgery is your choice, you need to be aware that this, and this can happen. And are you prepared for all of these possibilities? Like, are you prepared? The usual, like, surgery.
No, I haven't had brain surgery, so I don't know.
Well, a lot of them were the usual, like with any surgery, like there's an element of, when you're put under the anesthesia, like anything could happen, like so on and so forth. And then there was also, I remember my surgeon telling me, once we get in there, like, we're in God's country, because it was in your brain. And so he really kind of made it clear that, there is a chance that one wrong move and you can't move, or you can't, speak, or you can't do all the things that you really haven't even ever thought about not having. And and there was also the possibility that I wouldn't wake up. And so at 22, I don't think you ever expect to be faced, kind of like you mentioned with that story, like, I don't think you ever expect to be faced with, am I really ready? Should this happen? And so that was a big moment. And it was also difficult, because my sister was getting married 3 weeks later. And
I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah. And so there was definitely an element of, I knew that going through the surgery meant that I was going to need help with everything. And so, which I did. I had to move back home for a little over 2 months, because I just couldn't do things on my own. And so it was a decision that I had to make, knowing that it was going to make things harder for my parents. But also knowing that I genuinely didn't know that I could survive if I didn't do this.
So as a mom, I'm telling you right now, it was not hard on your parents. I am going to go ahead. I bet if your mom was sitting here, she'd go, it was not hard on us. I think the hard part on them would be just watching you and wanting to make sure you're okay. But as being back in their home and them getting to take care of you at a very vulnerable stage in your life, I doubt that. I think the only hard thing on your mom and dad was, we want her well yesterday. We want her whole yesterday, and them struggling with that. What was it like for your parents, especially with the wedding coming up? Because I'm sure they were, you know,
it was a lot,
and for our other daughter. So
yeah, it was definitely a lot. And I think, you know, my parents have always been supportive, and they've always kind of been there, you know, should anything be needed. And so I wasn't as concerned. I think I was more concerned about the burden that I was going to place on them, knowing that they had all of this stuff going on. But I think they, like you said, I think they just wanted me to feel better. And I think it was really hard. And I didn't realize this until probably within the last year, that where I had to go through a lot of healing after the surgery, and not just physically, just like the mental, you know, turn that it takes on you, and the spiritual realities of it, and how all of that takes time, and how it doesn't, you know, the pain may go away, but there are still lingering things that you kind of have to work through. And I think in the last year, I've realized that my parents had that too, on some level. Yeah. And so I think that has been a way for me to have more grace in that process, and for them, and for, you know, when they ask me still, you know, are you okay? Like, do you have a headache? and I think there's a lot of grace that I have learned to have on both sides.
Yeah. Of them almost, I don't want to say hovering. Yes, I will. I'll say it. I'd be like every minute going, okay, are you all right? Did you have a headache? Did you get dizzy? Are you faint? Are you okay? You know, do you need anything? Because you were like on the very edge right there for a couple of months. One wrong move and they would lose you. And that's hard to say. I mean, right now, I was just talking, I get very emotional about that, because that's a lot. That is a lot as a parent. And I know you, so I'm sitting here thinking, I can't imagine this world without you, Courtney. So, and I thank you for sharing your story. Your book goes into a little more detail. And so I don't want to discount the fact of the book, because the whole point of the book is not so much what you've been through, because I'm hoping there'll be a second book out about that, but about where God has the insight and the drive that God has given you to write a book for young Christians coming out of home. And I've got to tell you right now, it is, I was reading the statistics on this, of how many young people who have been raised in a Christian's home and have been super active in church, and they leave home and they walk away from their faith, not just the church, they walk away from their faith. And there's a reason, and while I am not condemning anybody, it is a concern. But I would love for you to share, were you challenged with that? Is my faith really real?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we all are. I think when you are removed from kind of this worldview that you've had your entire life, and gosh, I was only going an hour and a half away. Like, it wasn't like I was moving across the country. But it was far enough that I was far enough removed from my family and from my town and all these people that knew me. And I kind of had to decide, you know, when I got to college, okay, is this what I believe? You know, outside of what the expectations are, is this what I am choosing to believe? And I had,
and I was in college, but I was just like, is this real? You know, so.
Yeah, it definitely, I think we all have that moment where you're kind of in a place where you do have to decide for yourself. You know, your parents can raise you and your community can support you. But I do think that there comes a point when you've got to say, okay, knowing all of this, do I want to continue on that track?
I love it when people are challenged with that. And I know God is too, because God tells us in his word, you seek me, you hunt me down. Oh, I'll be there and I will show off and I will show you my love for you. You're going to be sharing that in your book too, of, you know, make it yours. Make your faith your own faith. Make it based off of you and what God's leading you to do. And I know as a parent, and then you have to stop and go, wait a minute, you're not mine. And I remember always praying over my daughters every morning going, God, I know they're not mine. You're just loaning them to me. So help me to encourage them to listen to you, because that's who they ultimately need to be listened to. And I know your mom, you said, you know, she prayed with you all the time. And I'm sure she prayed with you on that as well. But to leave where you were and to go to Nashville, was that hard? And in the field, because you're going into camp, that was not your original choice, was it?
Well, you know, I think you made a really good point about kind of the prayer of parents being that the children would know God and have that relationship with him. Because I think for me, coming to Nashville, you know, first of all, let me just say, I don't think any parent prays that their kid would be an accountant. I don't think that's on the list.
Unless parents are accountants.
You know, I would maybe even argue that still wouldn't be. But anyway, I came to Nashville for accounting and for public accounting. And in college, I was going to run a business just like my dad. That was the plan. I was going to have a business back home in Lawrenceburg, and I was just going to have a great little life, and I was never going to leave the borders unless I was going to the beach. And so coming to Nashville really was a big step for me.
Or Christmas camp.
Very important. But yeah, I think coming to Nashville, and I talk about this a little bit in the book, I think we have a tendency to compare our moves with other people's moves. And so for someone that has moved all their life, a move to Nashville is a breeze. Mm-hmm. But for me, like, I had been in the same place my entire life. And so to make the choice to move, even though it was only an hour and a half, I was moving everything. Yeah. You know, I had to find new friends. I had to find a new church. I was starting this new job and, living in an semi-unfamiliar place. And I think there was a lot of time that I had to take to where I was saying, okay, here I am. Like, I didn't really even want to be here, God, but here we are. We'll do this your way for a little bit, and then I'll go back home.
I love it.
And that's how it started for me, Oh, and then much. Like, I'll give you a year.
I love it.
But I came here and I found a really great church, and I found a great group of friends, and really built a life for myself the way that I really wanted to. It's a life that I imagined no part of it. If you had asked me before I even graduated college, none of my life currently would have been a part of that. But it has been such a blessing, and it's been just, to me, it's been further proof that, God knows what he's doing. Mm-hmm. Even when it makes no sense to me, even when I've spent 22 years saying I'm going to live in this one place, when the Lord says move, and you step in obedience and you move in obedience, there is so much blessing that I just would have missed if I had been stubborn, which I do have a tendency to be.
I think we all do. One of my favorite authors, Patterson, he said that he's written a book, and it's called The Wild Goose, and it's based off of another group that they call the Holy Spirit the Wild Goose, because when you follow God, you never know where he's going to take you. But it's the most amazing. I'm feels on my right now, because it's the most amazing journey when you say yes. It is like, okay, here we go, and it's not your plans. And the things that you go through, like what you have been through in the middle of it, you're like, okay, what are you doing? I am sitting here at my parents' house. I am completely dependent on them. I can't get dressed. I can't do a thing. What's up? You know, what are we doing here?
Mm-hmm.
And when you go through those seasons, I know with me, I have a cycle. I have my pity party where I cry and I'm like, what just hit me? And then I go through the, okay, was I really listening to God? And then I get to the point I'm like, thank you. Because then I start seeing all the good things that have come from what I thought was the most horrible thing to happen.
Yeah.
Then God starts showing me, hey, wait a minute. You're uncomfortable, but if you'll sit here and listen, quit forming like a little puppy, I've got something to show you. And then he like turns to you and says, do you see that? And you're like, oh, I didn't see that because I was too busy over here. And I would just love to hear your perspective on that. What's your cycle when you go through this? When you go through big things, what's your cycle?
I think for me, specifically related to my surgery, which was the season that kind of the book idea was started, it really was kind of a season of grieving. You know, no one had died, thankfully. I, woke up from the surgery. But I still felt like I lost a lot. And so I really had to kind of grieve those losses and, the loss of the life that I thought I was going to have that now has some limits that I didn't have before. And grieving just the loss of my independence in that season. And come to find out it was long-term loss of independence because it was through that season that I realized how important it is to depend on the Lord and let other people help you. Mm-hmm. Because, the Bible says that, as a church, we're the hands and feet of Jesus. And so how, you let people be the hands and the feet. And, and then you turn around and do that for other people. But I think as far as the process for me, it started out as grieving. And I think I also had a round of depression wrapped in that for me, just because it was so, I think there was so much pain physically that I kind of had shut down a little bit just out of a sense of like self-preservation almost. And I just think, as hard as that was, and as much as I didn't see it and in that moment, I just think that I knew that this was not the end. I knew that there was something else for me. And, I did ask for a long time, why did this happen? Like, what, how does this fit into anything? And I think at this point I've given up those questions because I think in asking those questions, and I do think that if that's the question you want to ask it. God can take it, like
he wants to ask and
he wants,
he can.
Yeah.
He's happy with that.
And so I think I really learned that, to be honest with God and to be upfront. And honestly, I did not hold any punches. And I think, some people may not like that, but I didn't, in that moment, I was like, I have nothing left. Like, I can't do this anymore.
Don't you think God meets us though, is when we get to that point where we're like, I'm all in, you step in here, I got some questions for you. And it's not so much that we're doing it out of defiance, we're scared, we don't understand, we want to the relationship that we had with him when things are going really good, it just seems ripped right then, and it's like, where are you?
Also an element of I've done all the right things.
Yes,
I've done everything right and I still landed here. And so I think for me, allowing myself to ask those questions really, it opened an element of my relationship with God that I don't think I had before.
You think it was deeper?
It absolutely was deeper. I let myself ask the questions and say the hard things. It released all of that tension that I was holding. And it made room for God to then come in and say, okay, now you got it out. So now let me fill it back up. I think we just have a tendency to hold on to our feelings and our struggles and our doubts and our bitterness and our anger. But when we do finally like give those up to the Lord, gosh, he moves.
It does, because I know for me, when I have been at those points when I was like face planted with what life had thrown at me, and I'm like, did you just see what happened? Where were you? And then, like I said, you get to the point where you're just like, okay, you're big enough to handle the cross. You're big enough to handle the whole world. You can handle my question. What do you want to teach me? Because I don't know. I'm confused and I'm lost. And what do I do on all this? You've gone in and you've wrestled with God, just like Jacob did.
Yeah.
And you have come out with a book. And I would like you to share with us a little bit more about the book. And had you always aspired to be a writer?
Well, the answer to that is a resounding no. I'm an accountant. Like that's my trade. That's my, that's what I went to school for. And so writing a book was never on the radar. And, I've blogged a little bit since college, because it was then, in college when you're deciding your faith for yourself, that I kind of started to blog and to write, just as a way for me to process my own thoughts and emotions. And so I had done that, but it was usually more for me than for anyone. Goodness. But no, this book, when I was recovering from my surgery, I was at home, couldn't work for 10 weeks. I couldn't really do anything except sit in the recliner, and I ate lots of ice cream cake cupcakes and saltine crackers. Those are my two specialties. And so in that season, I was sitting there in my dad's recliner, which he gave up for 10 weeks. So that's just
kudos to
that's
Dad.
A good dad. Yeah.
And
it is. And so as I was sitting there, I kind of one day just had this, I had been kind of processing what just happened. What does it mean for my work? What does it mean for for me? Yeah. How is this going to affect? Am I going to be able to work at the same level that I was? Like, are people going to look at me differently that I work with and think that I'm not as capable now? Or there were all of these questions. And so in the middle of all of that, it was kind of like, and I had been wrestling with God all of that time with that. And there came a moment when I just was sitting there and I had this thought that just was like, write a book. And I was like, I don't know where that came from, but let's just like put that right back out the door, because we're not doing that. No, that's not the plan. And so and again, every day I would sit there and I would ask these questions, and the answer would just be, write a book, write a book, write a book. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going back to work. That's what I'm doing. And, which I did do. But it took me about 6 months before I finally was like, okay, this thought has not gone away. And I have been a believer long enough to know that this is the Lord.
His nudging.
Yeah. And so the book for me, it started as part of my healing process, because again, I process life in words. And so I wrote what I was going through, and that's how it started. And then it kind of transformed into, oh my gosh, the 8 months that I had been working, I kind of let my career and my standing at work kind of become more important than my faith. And that kind of was trumping, the time that I spent with God. And there was just, I don't know, I started to realize, wow, like this is a really slippery slope. Like it happened so quickly for me that I started relying on my work to be my security. And I started relying on work. And when work wasn't going well, I was terrified of what would happen. And
you up your identity in your work, didn't you?
Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. And so in starting the book and in writing my thoughts, granted, I still would not call it a book. I would not have called anybody.
Journaling, right?
You're just still yeah. I don't even have like a Microsoft Office on my computer, my personal computer. So I started writing in a Google Doc because that's all I had. But I thought, I'll just write all these thoughts down and we'll just see what happens. I feel like this is going to be a book, but
Not going to say it's a book.
I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it.
So why? Why are you so adamant that this isn't going to be a book? I mean, why were you adamant about that?
I think it was a scary thought. I think, as to where
the book is a lot.
It is a lot.
It is a lot.
It is a lot. And I think there was a lot of fear about, number one, if I write this book, it's going to be about my story, and it's going to be about, struggles that I've had. Yeah. And at the time, it was, all of these kind of revelations were very fresh. And so I was like, I don't know that I want everybody reading that, like, I don't know that I want everyone reading about all of these struggles, but it was kind of in that struggle, with writing the book, that I feel like the Lord just kind of said, okay, you have gone through all of this. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like for the whole process, it was like he had given me a front row seat to not do anything but watch him work. Mm. And that's how it was. And so I had
a place to be at.
It is a great place, as hard as it was in the moment.
I love that. He gave you a front row seat to just watch him work. I like that.
He did. And I think in the writing and the processing, all of that, I started to realize that, and realize the gift that it had been. And then I kind of started having this sense that he was just saying something like, now let me just say, I have never heard the audible voice of God. So when I say that I hear him saying, I didn't actually hear it, it's just always like a little thought in my head, or like a nudge in my spirit. But for me, it felt like the Lord was saying, what are you going to do with what I've shown you? Yeah. I've given you all this time to watch and to process and to think, but what are you going to do with it? And it was during that time that I thought, okay, these struggles that I've had may have been highlighted by this massive thing that I went through, but they're struggles that we all have. Fear and anxiety and control and comparison and all of these things, where we find our identity and where we place our security, like where we find our security, these struggles, they're not just for people that have had brain surgery,
they're for everyone. And I think the book is going to be very relatable to so many people, and so many people are going to be able to see themselves in your pages, because they're going to be able to say, like you just did, I may not have had brain surgery, but I know what it's like to be scared, finding your own way as a young lady in on a new adventure by myself, and taking everything that's been taught me in my life, and how do I sift through that and create my own life out of that. And I love what you're doing with your book. I love how you're encouraging young ladies to understand that being a Christian in the workplace is huge. And I'm very, very big on us understanding the depth of that, because as Christians in the workplace, we need to hold to our faith. That is so, and to do it in a respectful way, do it in a loving way. Let me reemphasize that, in a super loving way, because especially as leaders on the workplace, how you act may be the only Christian, the only Christ, the only true love of God that some people see. So everything that you do in the workplace is a ministry. And I appreciate that you're doing that, because you could have stepped away from that and just said, I'm sick, I can't go back to that. But you didn't. You've come back into the workplace. You're still working with the Preds. And you also, you were doing a few other things too right now, aren't you, that you've taken on in your life?
I have a tendency to take on a lot of things. Some would say more than I can handle. I don't know.
I think you've been handling it very well. And I'm glad that you've taken this on right now at this time.
So I recognize at this point the value of faith and work. And I think it's important to say, it's not just, it is, but it's not only, I show my faith through how I love people and how I interact with people at work. But it's also at the most basic level, it fuels your work. You know, I think it's important to recognize that, you know, at the core of our identity, like, we're made for work. We aren't meant to just sit on a couch, you know?
Exactly.
And so in being made for good work,
and I would dare say excellence, because when you're at work and you're doing your job excellently, it's an I don't know, to me, it's a testimony of God using your life, and you get to be an example.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, you do get to be an example. And so I think in helping be that example, I think the more you know God, the more you can reflect him in your work. And I think the more that you know the word, the more you can incorporate it into your work. And for me, what that looks like is, you know, when I know that I'm accepted and I'm loved and I'm chosen, and, you know, my identity is rock solid in Christ, I can then step into my work, not looking for the satisfaction of other, you know, not looking for approval or satisfaction or any form of justification through work, because I already have that. And so then I can work as an act of worship.
Be free and do it.
Yeah. For the God who has, number one, given me the ability to do the work, and who has given me the brains to do the work, albeit maybe a little bit too big of a brain, you know. But I just think everything that I have has been given to me by God. And so in the way that I work, that is an opportunity for me to say, here's what I believe about God, and here's what I believe God says about me. And so now let me work from that place and from that knowledge.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I think it's so important. Like I said, that these young ladies, and guys too, whoever wants to read the book, I think it's really important that we understand that this is a beautiful transition coming out. You're always, let me just say this right now, and to everybody listening and watching, once you're my kid, you're always my little kid. And I have my oldest daughter has 3 children, and she's still my little girl. I have another daughter who's married and is taking the world by storm, and she's still my little girl. And then my third daughter is working on her PhD. She's still my little girl, and they always will be. So you as an adult trying to step out of that, I understand, because also, you know, I realize, you know, I got a mom too, and stepping out of being their little girl, that is a beautiful, but it's also an awkward stage, because you have that, and we're from the South, so you do carry the pride of family connection, and of a good family connection, and you want to hold on to that, but you also want to create your own identity that is you, and that, you know, other people will look at and go, wow, that's awesome. And sometimes you just feel like, oh man, I didn't hit that mark today. But that's the joy, and that's the courage of stepping out and growing up. Is and it's true for all of us. Growing up is always going to have some potholes and some bumps in the road of how we manage things and some decisions we make. But I've been around you, Courtney. I've served on a board with you, and I have watched you as a leader. And I just want to say right now, thank you that you have pushed through the hard part of writing a book when you're not a writer, pushing through some of the days that I know you feel like I just don't have any more energy, but you still do. And you've been a great leader. And I'm just even seeing you take a turn in your leadership of being more bold. And I love seeing that. And I appreciate you being on here as not the Courtney I know, but as the author and the amazing woman that I am hoping that our readers will take a chance to listen to us today and take advantage of getting your book. How can we find your book, Courtney?
Yes. So the book is available on Amazon. That may be the easiest way to get it. It's also sold on my website, which is just it's CourtneyGraceWrites.com.
Okay. And also you have a newsletter that I get every Monday.
Made for Monday.
I enjoy that, and your encouragement. You've got a lot of insight and depth in your thoughts and in your encouragement. It's not just, this isn't Mary Poppins stuff. This is really I appreciate how you've thought things through, and your newsletters and your depth is really impressive. I've enjoyed.
Thank you. I think for me, it's all wrapped up in my faith, and it's all wrapped up just in, and it's also a reason that I've started going to seminary, which is, I think, what you were referring to earlier.
Yes, I was. Maybe she don't want to talk about it.
No. I did that because I think for me, knowing that I think this way about my faith, and knowing that that I want to encourage other women and men, for that matter, to recognize that they don't have to leave their faith at the door, when they get to work, and recognizing that, like, as I'm going to speak to women specifically right now, but as women, you get to work, and sometimes you're already exhausted before the day has been started. And so, the Made for Monday emails, which is just it's an email that goes out every Monday, just to encourage people to start their weeks, remembering their identity in Christ, and remembering that they were made for the work that they're doing. And just the book is an extension of that, even more so, specifically for people kind of navigating transitions. So yeah, I think it's important, and it's what I want. It's what I want everyone to know,
Well, you've done an excellent job with it. And I believe when people look at your website and they start taking a look at your book, your emails that you've been sending out, your blogs, they're going to understand what I've come to know, and the depth and the persistent courage that you have just shown, and just in your life. And I think it's interesting too that as you have gone through all of that, and then COVID hits, and you have a year of reflection, and I remember you going through some of that too, of, wait a minute, I want to go deeper. And that takes courage too, to say, okay, here we go again. And to me, it's a layering, and
it is.
And I've watched you do this, Courtney, and you're just amazing at all of this. I can't wait for other people to get to read and hear your story. So thank you for being here on the midweek MOXIE on the Lioness Summit. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Everybody, please reach out to Courtney. I will have her information on we will post it, of how you can get in touch with Courtney, and how you can take a look at her book and add it to your library, and have a chance to stay in touch with her, ask her any questions. And once again, thank you for being here, Courtney, and we will talk to you later. Okay? Bye-bye, everyone.